From the creators of Game of Thrones, Netflix brings us Three Body Problem, a sci-fi series that is causing a sensation around the world. Although many consider the original novel by Liu Cixin as unadaptable, it seems that Netflix has achieved the impossible with this TV show. But is it as good as they say? There's only one way to find out. Let's take a look at the recap of Three Body Problem. Before we get started, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and thank you for watching. The series begins in 1966 China, during the Cultural Revolution. In the middle of a protest, a girl named Ye Wenji witnesses the cruel execution of her father, a physics professor accused of being counter-revolutionary for his teachings. A year later, at a labor camp, Wenji meets Mu Lin, a young man who gives her a copy of Silent Night, a Western book. Though the two fall in love, the officers discover the book and Mu Lin blames Wenji. After some time in prison, the girl is sent to a remote station with a large radio telescope where her knowledge of physics could be useful to the Red Coast Project. Soon, she discovers that the station is not for war purposes, but is intended to communicate with something out of this world. We advance to 2024 to meet Clarence Shi, an investigator for the Strategic Intelligence Agency, who is following up on a mysterious chain of scientist suicides. The crime scenes are surrounded by blood and a phrase that reads, "Still see it." That explains why the scientists gouged out their eyes. At Oxford University, Wenji's daughter Vera chats with one of her former students, Saul Durand, who is frustrated by the outcome of his recent experiments. For some inexplicable reason, every particle accelerator in the world is giving a result that doesn't make sense according to the laws of physics. After trying to motivate him, Vera throws herself into the lab's water well, another dead scientist. On the other hand, Augie Salazar, another former student of Vera Ye, starts seeing a countdown timer made of particles in front of her eyes. Her friend Jin Chang, Oxford's top physicist, brings her back to reality and informs her about the death of their professor. At Vera's funeral, Augie still can't stop looking at the strange countdown timer. Later, the late teacher's students gather at a pub to reminisce about old times. There we meet the other members of the gang, Jack Rooney and Will Downing. But even the company of his friends is not enough to reassure Augie. When she goes outside for a smoke, a mysterious woman named Tatiana appears out of nowhere and asks her how much time is left on her countdown. According to the woman, Augie must abandon her nanofiber research and shut down her lab to stop the countdown. Before leaving, the woman asks her to look at the sky tomorrow at midnight. In an attempt to understand why Vera committed suicide, Jin goes to Wenji, who reveals that her daughter spent a lot of time with a gaming headset. Jin tries out the headset and ends up in a virtual reality video game called Three Body. The game involves predicting the movements of the sun to save an artificial planet. At midnight, Augie, Saul, and the rest of humanity witness the night sky blink in a pattern corresponding to the countdown. Returning to 1960s China, Wenji concludes that the Project Red Coast transmitter does not have the required power to contact other civilizations. Therefore, she points out that the sun can amplify radio signals. Unfortunately, this proposal is rejected because the Chinese people see their dictator Mao Zedong as the Red Sun of China. As always, politics getting in the way of the progress of science. Still, Wenji executes her plan in secret, redirecting the antenna to the sun just before a test transmission. She has sent a message to the universe. In 1977, Wenji meets Mike Evans, a radical American environmentalist who opposes the construction of a radio astronomy laboratory in neutral territory. In a disguised way, Wenji confesses to Evans that she supports his cause. Later, an ally in the military helps her find the woman who inflicted the final blow on her father. Despite now living in a labor camp, the woman claims she would commit that murder again. At the station, Wenji receives the first message from outer space. It's from a pacifist from a hostile alien civilization, asking her not to try to contact them again because it would provoke an invasion. Well, that's exactly what the scientist wants. so she invites the aliens to Earth and promises to help them conquer humanity. Returning to the present, Augie oversees a demonstration of her nanofiber technology. Despite the test being a success, the scientist orders the immediate cancellation of the project to stop her countdown. With only a minute remaining, the timer disappears from her sight. Soon after, Clarence interrogates her as part of his investigation into Vera's death. Thanks to him, she discovers she is not the only one who saw a countdown. While some scientists decided to stop working like her, others took a more radical approach like Vera. Meanwhile, Jin advances in the video game 3 Body and predicts the movements of the sun. Thanks to this, her allies can rehydrate their fallen comrades. But when everyone thought they were saved, a great windstorm turns them into dust. Jin failed on the first level but can still succeed on the next. In reality, Jin shows the headset to Jack, who is immediately rejected in the virtual environment several times. Upon returning home, Jack finds a new headset with his name on it. From that moment on, the game adapts to his nationality. Excited, he meets with Will to tell him about the game. However, Will surprises him with even more important news. He has pancreatic cancer and only has about 6 months to live at most. Meanwhile, at the cemetery, Clarence visits his wife's grave when the mystery woman from the other night, Tatiana, shows up. While they don't converse much, the investigator senses that there is more to her than she lets on. During a gathering of friends at Jack's house, Augie stumbles upon his headset. As soon as she enters the virtual environment, she is ejected by an NPC. Then, Jack and Jin explain that she needs an invitation to play. However, Augie has no intention of doing that. Upset, she asks her friends to stop playing with that thing as it was involved in Vera's death. Given her insistence, Jack and Jin promise to give up 3 Body, although they secretly exchange tips on how to advance levels in the game. They even discover a 2-player mode. As a result of their cooperation, they discover that the virtual world always ends up destroyed due to a 3 Body problem. This is a physics question that poses the difficulty of predicting the motion of 3 bodies belonging to the same orbital system. In this case, the resulting system is chaotic for most initial conditions. As proof of this, the world starts to burn by the appearance of 3 simultaneous suns. Speaking of the number 3, Jin and Jack have reached the 3rd level. Meanwhile, Augie confronts the representative of her sponsors, who threatens to withdraw her work visa if she doesn't restart the nanofiber project. As soon as Augie turns on the machine, the countdown comes back to haunt her, so she quickly shuts everything down. In the next phase of the game, Jin and Jack progress on to the 3 Suns issue, concluding that they must save the virtual people, not their planet. At that point, it is revealed that the gaming headset is a recruitment tool used by Evans, who is now an oil tycoon and has been communicating regularly with the aliens through an old radio. Shortly after, Jin and Jack access level 4 of the video game, which shows the evolution of the Santee, the alien civilization of Trisolaris, a planet in the Alpha Centauri star system 4 light-years away. Thanks to the human scientists, the aliens learn that their 3 Body problem is unsolvable and leave for a new home, Earth. All this time, they have been helping the aliens invade their world. However, Jack thinks it's a scam and leaves in disgust. As soon as he arrives home, he's surprised by Tatiana, who brutally murders him for stopping playing the game. The place is supposed to be full of security cameras, though the killer disappears into the footage. We return to 1982 when Wenji served her time at the radio station and became a college professor. She shows her displeasure with the new Mike Evans, who inherited her father's oil company. However, he claims that still has the same goals. Therefore, Wenji decides to tell him about her message to the alien civilization. A couple of years later, Evans takes Wenji to his ship called Judgment Day, which will serve as their transmission center for communicating with the Santai. They are both so happy about this that can't help but kiss each other. In 2024, Clarence and Thomas Wade, the director of the Strategic Intelligence Agency, show Jin and Augie the video of Jack's death, where the killer does not appear. Since Jin is the best lead available, Thomas asks her to attend the next meeting of the three body players as a spy. The woman is hesitant at first, but Thomas and Clarence promise that they will be watching her the whole time. Somewhere in the North Atlantic, there is Judgment Day, now packed with Santee followers. They all look forward to the day of arrival and refer to the aliens as our Lord. In his office, Evans communicates with a liaison of the alien civilization and tells it the story of Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf. The aliens do not understand the concept of fiction, as in their society they communicate too literally, without metaphor, exaggeration, or lies. Evans laughs at this until the liaison interprets the story as evidence that humanity lies by nature, and they cannot coexist with liars. Meanwhile, Jin shows up at the secret meeting and discovers that the founder of the Earth Trisolaris movement is Wenji herself, which takes Thomas and Clarence by surprise. The old woman excitedly cheers that the Santee are approaching Earth with cutting-edge technology and knowledge that will help both races prosper. The arrival of the aliens is still 400 years away, so the cultists must prepare the next generations to welcome them. Suddenly, British security forces burst into the meeting and cause panic. However, Wenji affirms that this is the will of our Lord and calms her followers. Then, a couple of officers pretend to arrest Jin to get her out of there. Unfortunately, Tatiana notices this and opens fire on the officers, sparking a general confrontation. In the middle of that, Tatiana tries to shoot Jin, but Clarence is faster and manages to shoot the cultist down. Despite her wound, Tatiana manages to flee the scene. Clarence handles Wenji personally and takes her to an interrogation room. Far from feeling intimidated, she acclaims that the Santee allowed her to be captured because she is no longer useful to them. On other matters, the investigator asks her why she responded to the pacifist alien's message knowing that it would cause an invasion. Wenji has no regrets and points out that humanity cannot solve its own problems. They need the Santee. Adding to that, the old woman reveals that Vera's father is Evans, something she hid from her daughter until her fateful death. The first time Evans saw her daughter was in a coffin. Beyond that, Wenji has no more useful information about the Santee. Consequently, Clarence and Thomas plan to raid the Judgment Day ship to steal a data disk. Thanks to recent intel, they know that the ship will be passing through the Panama Canal shortly. To execute their plan, they need Augie's nanofibers, who has no choice but to turn on her machine with the risks that entails. However, this time, the countdown does not appear. After that, Thomas selects a Royal Navy squadron led by Raj, Jin's boyfriend, to raid the ship. During preparations for the mission, Augie expresses concern about possible casualties of innocent people. Thomas doesn't care about that at all, and is willing to sacrifice a few lives to prevent an unprecedented invasion. As the ship enters the Panama Canal, Augie's invisible nanofibers cut it horizontally. So do the passengers. During the massacre, Evans grabs the data disk and tries to flee, though he breaks an ankle on the way. His judgment day has arrived. After the ship ends up shattered on the shore, Thomas congratulates Augie on her invention. Of course, she has nothing to celebrate. Soon after, Thomas finds the data disk in the bowels of Evans' corpse. It was easy to find it, but decrypting it's a titanic task that takes weeks with little progress until one day it's unlocked for no reason. Or so it seemed because Clarence deduces that the Santee allowed it. Meanwhile, Thomas gives Wenji a tape recorder of the conversations between Evans and the liaison. Thanks to this, she hears how the Santee misinterpreted the tale of Little Red Riding Hood and now see humanity as a threat. Later, Thomas goes to Jin to inspect the largest file on the disk through the gaming headset. In the virtual environment, they meet a Santee representative who tells them about SOFON's high-dimensional proton supercomputers designed to cause the anomalous effects observed in particle accelerators. This explains the incomprehensible results of Vera's team's experiments and the countdown timers that led to the suicides of many scientists. As Trisolaris is subject to the unpredictable gravitational forces of the three suns, The Santai have had to survive climatic disasters that sweep the planet from time to time. As a result, their technology is advancing slowly while humans enjoy a perfect environment for development. Faced with this problem, the aliens send a Sophon to Earth to slow down technological development before their arrival. Soon after, every electronic device in the world displays a chilling message: "You are bugs." Then, a Sophon envelops the Earth, forming a giant eye in the sky. For the first time, humanity witnesses the power of the Santai. The strange phenomenon is called "eye in the sky" and causes a worldwide uproar. Due to the wave of panic and riots, world governments order curfews in major cities in an attempt to control the chaos. Still, the panic only increases, and thousands of people decide to end their own lives before the arrival of the aliens. In light of the situation, Thomas and the Planetary Defense Council, PDC, assemble a group of experts to discuss how to intercept the Santai fleet. Thomas proposes launching a probe that would reach less than 1% of the speed of light, enough to obtain information from the Santai fleet in 398 years. Being selected to build this probe, Jin creates the Staircase Project, which consists of using 1,000 nuclear bombs as propulsion sources for a probe with radiation sails. Jin turns to Augie for help in designing the sail, although she dislikes Thomas and calls him a murderer for what he did in Panama. Later, Will also tries to convince Augie to collaborate with the PDC, not because of Thomas, but because Jin needs her. While she would rather accompany Will in his last days, Augie prioritizes the sake of humanity and agrees to work with the PDC. Meanwhile, Jin asks Raj for explanations for his supposed training mission in Panama. He is forced to tell her the truth but has no regrets. After all, the people on the ship were collaborating with the Santee, even the children. Meanwhile, Clarence asks Wenji why her daughter committed suicide. The old woman confesses that Vera discovered her messages with the Santee. Vera never confronted her mother about this, but we already know how her story ended. After that, the investigator decides to release Wenji under constant surveillance to discover her hideout. The next day, Jin receives the certificate of ownership of the star DX 3906. Since the Eye in the Sky accident, many millionaires have bought stars as possible homes for their future offspring. Jin thinks it's a gift from some mysterious rich suitor and continues her labors. Speaking of which, the scientists conclude that the space probe must be manned by a human. Since the journey will take hundreds of years, they test cryogenic technology with a chimpanzee who had been inside a freezing capsule for a month. Since the test is successful, Thomas intends to go into cryosleep to meet the Santai in 400 years. Project Staircase encounters its first obstacle due to the lack of sufficient nuclear bombs to propel the probe. The only solution is to reduce crew space, so the probe can only carry one human brain. In other words, they need someone super intelligent, willing to die. Someone like Will. Thomas is willing to recruit him no matter what, which Augie finds so indignant that she quits the PDC once and for all. After that, Augie makes his nanofiber research public for the greater good of society, not her sponsors. As that may cause her legal problems, she decides to leave the country. Meanwhile, Jin explains the Staircase Project to Will, but doesn't want him to board the probe. He deserves a peaceful death. Thanks to her, Will turns down the PDC offer. Sensing her death approaching, Wenji tries to pass on her knowledge of cosmic sociology to Saul in the form of a joke that the Santee will find difficult to decipher. The punchline of the joke says, "Never play with God." Elsewhere, we see a depressed Tatiana due to the silence of the Santee. Just then, the alien liaison appears on her TV and mentions that the Santai still need her. Eventually, Will changes his mind about the Staircase Project and recognizes this as his chance to do something worthwhile with his life. Well, his death in this case, so he euthanizes himself alongside his loyal friend Saul. At the PDC headquarters, Thomas comments to Jin that she didn't say goodbye to the suitor who gifted her the star, Will, who bought that with Jack's inheritance in an attempt to confess his feelings to Jin. Jin rushes to the hospital, only to discover that Will's brain has already been extracted. Elsewhere, Wenji visits the old Red Coast Project site in China, where Tatiana informs him that she has completed her work with the Santi and deserves to rest. In other words, Tatiana must kill her. After a one-night stand, Saul accompanies his lover to wait for a cab. Suddenly, the cars start crashing into each other and end up running over the girl. During the investigation of this accident, Clarence concludes that it wasn't an accident at all. It was a plan by the Santee to kill Saul, who doesn't understand why the aliens want him dead. The investigator also has no logical explanation beyond the fact that Saul was the last person to talk to Wenji before her mysterious murder in China. Saul is taken to the United Nations where Project Wallfacer is announced. Since the Santai see and hear everything humans do thanks to the Sophon, the only safe place is the mind. Project Wallfacer needs 3 individuals to devise strategic plans against the Santai invasion in their minds, and will only make their plans public when it is time to execute them. Saul is one of those selected. However, he refuses the position and tries to leave the UN, only to be shot by a sniper. Thank goodness he has a bulletproof vest. At the hospital, Saul wonders why everyone is still protecting him if he turned down the Wallfacer position. Intrigued, he meets with the UN Secretary General, who reveals that he was chosen as Wallfacer because the Santee have a special interest in him. Why? It's a mystery he'll have to solve eventually. On the way to the probe's launch, Raj notices Jin distant and reminds her that Will is already dead. Upset, she claims that Will's brain is still alive and hopes that the Santai will rebuild his body. As Will's cryogenized brain is put into the probe, the PDC prepares to launch it into space. Jin and Saul gather to witness the event in honor of their friend's sacrifice. They both miss Augie, who is busy in her native Mexico helping poor communities with her nanofiber technology. Still, a part of her is present at the launch of the probe, specifically in the radiation sail she built. Through nuclear detonations, the probe is propelling through space until an unexpected error in the sail causes it to change course. Did Augie make a mistake, or did she do it on purpose? Whatever the truth, Project Staircase results in a resounding failure for the PDC and the entire world. Of course, the Santai don't miss the opportunity to taunt Thomas and make clear they have power over his destiny. The only reason he's still breathing is because he's part of the aliens' plans. To cheer Jin and Saul up, Clarence shows them a swarm of cicadas, insects that have survived despite humanity's decades-long attempts to eradicate them. The Santee refer to humans as bugs. Well, these bugs will never give up and will defend their home with everything they have. What an ending, don't you think? While the TV show hasn't been renewed for a second season, it's only a matter of time before they do. And if you think that everything will be resolved in the next season, because the creators themselves stated that they would need 4 seasons to tell the whole story, the fate of the space probe, the Wallfacer project, the Santee invasion, there are still many things to see in this wonderful science fiction universe. Could mankind come into contact with an alien civilization? And if it happens, how do you think the aliens would respond? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and as always, thanks for joining me. And don't forget to subscribe for more great videos.